Hey folks, it's Abby from Abby of Pellinor, and today I'm going to be going through my 2021 reading stats. So I managed what some might call a ridiculous number of books in 2021. If you include books that I DNF'd, it's 105. If you don't, then it's 103. Don't ask, because I don't fucking know. But we're going to go through all of the stats for them. And just diving straight in, the first stats that I'm going to be doing is, if I shuffle over, the number of books that I read each month. This fluctuates massively, but there is a general downwards trajectory towards the end of the year. As I've mentioned approximately 7,003,038 times, I moved house and moved job. So, I stopped reading. But the best month for reading for me in terms of number of books was February, where I read 15 books, which is fucking ridiculous. And my absolute worst month, unsurprisingly, is October. That is the month that I moved, it is the month that I got the new job, and it is the month that I had my birthday. So I read 4 books in October. 4 good books, but only 4. On average, I seem to be reading about 10 each month if you average everything out, which I'm pretty happy with. It's a lot more than I expected it to be. But then if we look at the page count, it is very different. So I can't actually see the exact numbers for each month here. In terms of the page count overall, in the year I read 32,399 pages. And my worst month, obviously October, was only 1,053 pages. Now I can't see the exact number for the best month because it's white on white and we're just going to accept that. But it looks to be around 4,500 pages in one month, which is shocking, and I don't know how I managed it. The page count fluctuates a lot more. Like January I read 9 books, but my page count is just over 1,000. So I don't think they were very big ones, but I think my page count seems to average around, if you include the low months, about 2,500 pages each month. That is not what I would like it to be. I want it to be higher, purely because I'm trying to read bigger books, and clearly failing. But we'll see how that one goes. And then, as I mentioned, I had DNF'd 2 books. Those were right at the end of the month, one in November and one in December. Technically, I'd also DNF'd another book earlier on in the year, which I think was in like August, and that was Double Cross by Mallory Blackman. I just wasn't in the right headspace to read it, but I've only recently started actually counting my DNFs properly, so we're just running with it. And the reason for the DNFs were general apathy and everything is sucky. So I just wasn't in the mood for them. It was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which was Everything is Sucky, and then The Bazaar of Bad Dreams by Stephen King, which was just general apathy. I was just like, eh. Then into the reading method, unsurprisingly I read primarily physical books from my TBR, and I read 85 physical books. Which is fucking high, and now I'm even more mad that my TBR is still massive. How do I still have 124 books on my physical TBR? If you want to see all of those, I don't know why, but there's the video. But yeah, somehow I managed that. Then ebooks, I read 15 ebooks. Again, surprisingly high. And then I read 5 audiobooks, and I'm pretty sure all of those were right at the end. With my new job, I can listen to things while I work. I had been listening to music, I had been watching booktube videos, but I've decided to try and make use of that time for reading, so now I listen to audiobooks while I work. Yes, I'm very lucky to be able to do that, I know. Then for the genres that I was reading each and every month, so it looks as though I read across 9 different genres, and to nobody's fucking surprise, fantasy is the biggest genre. So out of the 103 books that I read, 47 of them were fantasy. But then I am pretty surprised by second place, which is non-fiction at 16 books, which I'm very happy with. Third place, still surprising, 15 books were classics. What have Caitlin and Olivia done to me? And then another incredibly surprising one is 12 historical fictions. I thought that I wasn't reading historical fiction anymore. Where the fuck did they come from? What the hell? I don't even know what they were. I genuinely am not sure what they were, but that's what it says. And then for the rest of them, it's got 1 in a genre that's not listing on the pie chart. I'm not sure what that is. Going down, it is 5 contemporary. No more of those, thank you. 4 thrillers, 3 mystery, and then one whatever that was. Who knows? Maybe a romance, I highly doubt it. But yeah, so that is the genres. We are not surprised that it is almost half fantasy. I would like to bump up my science fiction a bit more. Only reading 12 of those. I do want to boost that up and try and make it more SFF rather than just F. But we'll see how I manage in 2022. Then for the length of the books that I read. For some reason the lengths of books read in CAWPILE is in a pie chart rather than a bar graph for 2021. She's changed it for 2022, but it's a little bit weird to look at. It does let us still see the biggest one, which is I read 14 books that were between 100 and 150 pages, so very, very short. But then the next biggest section is between 300 and 350, which is like quote unquote the standard length for a novel, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy, actually, I read 12 books between 400 and 450 pages in 2020, and before I would have considered that a really big book. Now that's just kind of like a standard book, so I'm very happy with that. My biggest books that are on the pie chart that I can actually fucking see is 600 to 650. I read 4 books in that page bracket. However, there are some bigger. I don't know what the 700 page book is, but I can tell you that that yellow piece of that pie chart is War and fucking Peace. My edition is like just under 1,000 pages, but it is the Wordsworth Classic Edition where all the chapters are smushed together and all the writing is magnifying glass required. So I just say that I've read an over 1,000 page book. You can fight me. So yeah, that is the length of the books that I read. I did read some bigger books and I am really happy with that, but I did read quite a lot of small books as well. So I'm trying to push myself towards bigger books because I used to love them when I was younger, and I would soak them in, and I've been putting them off because I'm intimidating when I'm older. So I'm intimidating? Sure. Then for the age category of the books that I read, 48.6%, 51 of my books were adult books. I'm not surprised. I had been surprised in 2019 and 2020 when I'd first had these stats come up because, like, what the fuck, I thought I read more YA. I do not. I read primarily adult books now. I am 25. I'm going to be turning 26 this year. I'm not mad about that. That's fine. Then I did still read quite a bit of YA. 33 books were YA, which is still a fair number. And then I read, oh, let me zoom in, 14 books that were middle grade and 7 books that were for children, so I felt that it could have been younger than middle grade or middle grade. I'm pretty happy with that, actually. A lot of the YA books are backlists or really hyped books that I kind of get pulled into, so I'm glad that I'm getting through those still. I'm glad that I'm primarily reading adult, and I don't want to stop reading middle grade and kids books entirely because there are some fantastic reads in there. My first read of 2022 was A Mario and the Night Brothers, and it's fucking amazing, so I'm very happy with this breakdown. Then looking at my star ratings. I had a pretty good year. I read 48 books, which is 46.2%, that I rated 4 stars. That is pretty damn high. My 5 stars were 30 different books I rated 5 stars. That is fucking ridiculous. And I went through them again and I agree with all of my ratings. So I had a very good 2021 for my reading, like, what? Then I had 21 3-star books, which for me is just that the book was fine. Like, it's halfway. It's like, if you were to do it on an out of 10 scale, that's like a 5. It's decent. And then I had 5 2-star books. 2 of those were the DNFs. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid is definitely in there. And obviously a couple others. But yeah, that's a very good reading year. Wow. Then for the publication year, again, this pie chart is difficult to read because I read across a lot of different years. However, my main year was 15 books, and that is 2021, which is insane. I do not think I have ever read that many books and had like the main bulk of my books come from the year that I'm reading in. Primarily I read backlist, so that is really surprising and actually kind of weird, but like nice to see still. I read 7 books from 2020 and 11 books from 2019, and I read 1 book from 1843. Not sure which book. Is that War and Peace? I don't know, because I read a lot of classics, so who knows. But yeah, so primarily from the year that they were published in, which is really fucking weird and I'm loving it. Then how I got the books. So the way that I did this is I kind of wrote in my own choices. So I have books from my TBR, so books that I owned before 2021 started. Books that are marked as owned are ones that I was rereading. Gifted, obvious. Bought, new ones in 2021. NetGalley, obvious. And then there is a 3, and I'm not sure what that is. Maybe borrowed? That might have been books that I borrowed. Primarily, 50 books, so almost half of my books were from my physical TBR from before the year started, which is really fucking good because I needed that. I needed to get some books off of my TBR. So 19 books that are marked as owned. Those are the rereads. Those are going to be mostly Skullduggery Pleasant books, let's be real here. I read 15 books that were gifted. Those were mostly from Caitlin from My Cheshire Rabbit and Carrie from Caring for Books. Thank you both. And then only 8 books that I bought, which, considering how big my TBR is, I need to fix that and actually read what I fucking buy. So yeah, I'm still really happy that I read mostly from my TBR, from what I already owned, but I do need to read a lot more of the books that are already on my like that I'm bringing in. Okay. So could be worse, could be worse. Then next up we have the LGBTQIA plus representation. These are marked first as whether there was nothing, whether it was the main character, or whether it was just present in the book as a different character. I primarily read straight books, or books where the sexuality wasn't mentioned. 66 of my books. 21 of the books that I read had the main character be openly LGBTQIA+, and 18 of the books were a non-main character. Out of that 21, a lot of them are going to have been, like, maybe 12 of them I will have marked down for the Skullduggery Pleasant books. It is, she's bi, our main character Val is bi, so she is definitely boosting that up. But yeah, that is something that I don't read a lot of. I do need to increase it. Priority has been getting more authors of colour onto my shelves. I'm doing better with that, so now I need to start increasing my numbers of LGBTQIA+ authors and characters onto my shelves. Hopefully from people of colour. The breakdown of kind of the 66 books that I did read that were in the gay bracket, 12 of them were bi. Those will be the Skullduggery Pleasant books. So primarily bisexual Skullduggery Pleasant. I read 4.2% books with pan representation, pansexual, so that is just one book. Not sure what that would have been actually. I read 3 books with demisexual representation. Oh yeah, so that'll be all the Bone Season series because I read the 2 novellas as well. The main character in the Bone Season is demisexual. Then 3 books with gay characters and 3 books with, I've marked as WLW, women loving women, so it doesn't specify the sexuality but it does show 2 women in a relationship. So that is what I ended up reading for that. I am already reading a bit more of LGBTQIA fiction this year. I've already read some more, so that is always good and hopefully we can boost that right up. Then on to the rereads. So I had 20 rereads and 85 books that I read for the first time. I'm not sure what else I read that was a reread. I can't remember, because obviously it was 12 books that were Skullduggery Pleasant. So I don't know what the other 8 are made of, but hey, at least I read them. And then in terms of whether it was a series or a standalone, this is the first time in a while that this has been almost 50-50 split. 53 books were from a series and 52 books were standalone. I read quite a few standalone books and I love that for me. Love a good standalone. So I do not want to change that at all actually. I'm quite happy with that. Still getting through my series, still like starting some new series, getting through some series that I love, but also still reading a lot of books that can stand by themselves. Then we have whether I read books from authors of colour. This is nowhere near fucking high enough. It is a lot better than 2020. That doesn't make it good. 81 of my books were by white authors or authors that I couldn't determine the ethnicity of. 19 of my books were by authors of colour. Broken down, there were 14 books from black authors, 4 books from Asian authors and 1 book from an Indo-Caribbean author. Again, I'm already doing better with that in 2022. Hopefully I continue to do better with that. If you see my February TBR, that is like 5 books by black authors, so already that is better. Hopefully I can keep that up. I have quite a lot of Asian authors on my TBR, so I'm really excited to read those as well this year and finally get around to them. This is something that is slowly improving. My TBR shelves are seeing the improvement faster than my actual reading. No one is surprised there. Related to that, we have own voices or not. The options are yes and not applicable. I don't read that much LGBTQIA fiction or disabled fiction or anything like that, so the majority of this is essentially just whether or not it is by a person of colour. There is a bit of discrepancy. There's 2 more books in the yes to own voices, so I must have read something where it was, for example, a book with disability representation with a disabled author. So that is slightly different, but it's essentially the same. Again, something else I need to work on. And then who it was written by. This is... yes, so I read 58 books by female authors and 43 by male authors. And most of those male authors are white. I, in 2020, read way more women than men. Way more. So it is kind of weird that it's swung back. I don't really want to be reading a lot of white men. Like, male authors of colour, yes, give me. Non-binary, which again is, I think, only 2 of the books that I read. Give me. I read 2 books with multiple authors in. But yeah, I need to stop reading so many white men. Hopefully as I get through my TBR and knock them down, that'll help. Maybe also because I read 15 classics and a lot of classics are written by men, that might have had an impact. But yeah, a lot more men than I usually read. In terms of the nationality of my authors, I'm going to hang my head in shame right now. I read primarily Americans. 39 books from Americans. That is too high. That is far too high. I think that is because I'm trying to get through my backlist, and also a lot of the authors of colour, especially black authors and indigenous authors that I mentioned, come from the US, so when I'm trying to expand that bracket, a lot of that is from there. So I need to find a lot more authors of colour from Britain, from Europe and from elsewhere in the world. But yes, so that is higher than I'd like. Only 28 British... no, that's a lie. That is a lie. 28 English authors. I specified. 28 English authors, 5 books from Scottish authors. 3 of those were from the Four Treasures series by Caroline Logan, because they are amazing. What else is there? We have 1 Japanese-American author. We have 19 books by Irish authors, so the 12 books from Skullduggery Pleasant, and then I did read another maths 5. No! Ooh, look at me! So many books. 7 books by Irish authors that weren't from Derek Landy. Nice. No, wait, it's 5. Derek Landy came out with 2 new books in 2021. Fuck. 5 books from Irish authors that weren't Derek Landy. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Sarah Maria Griffin. She's a fantastic author, she's amazing, so highly recommend her. 3 books from Canadians. 4 books from Swedish authors. We love. And then I can't see the rest of the breakdown, so there was a tiny amount for the rest in there. So yeah, too many Americans. No thank you. Need to remove those. Which is probably offensive to Americans, but like, eh. It's just, it's so much of what we see, so much of what is pushed, and I want to kind of read outside of my norm, which for me is British, so anything English or Scottish, and then American, because we get so much of that. So anything outside of English and American, I'm here for. Technically Scottish is my experience, and so it's debatable whether I should want to read more of that, but we don't see a lot of Scottish authors. They are not that prevalent, and I would love to see a lot more of them and read a lot more from Scottish authors. So they're separate. Just the English and the Americans. I want English to be higher than American, and I want American to be gone. And those are my 2021 reading stats, so that is my breakdown. As I said, just over 32,000 pages, which is not high enough, but we'll get there, we'll get there. Let me know down below, if you know the number, how many books you read. Just to say right now, if you read 5 books, that's amazing. If you read 50 books, amazing. 500, amazing. It doesn't actually matter how many books you read, as long as you're happy with the number. I'm trying to read a lot because I own a lot of unread books, and so I want to get the number down. That is why I'm reading a lot, and also this is my primary hobby. So yeah. That is why I read so much. I also read really fast, so like, again, if you're trying the same thing, just, it's fine. If you read 3 books in 2021, that is fantastic. But let me know down below how many you read, and if you know your favourite. Technically my favourite book of the year by the ratings is All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which I fucking loved, so I'm not mad at that at all. Thank you so much for watching, folks. Please hit subscribe if you'd like to see some more from me and see how my reading progresses in 2022, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!